Hello interwebs, welcome to Let's Fix Computers. This is going to be a no-post video, and I've got this industrial PC here. And this is an industrial PC for controlling a CNC machine, or effectively a CNC machine. I think it's from a car garage that does engine rebuilds. I think they said it was for a boring machine or something like that. Whatever. Industrial computer. So it's in this very, very fancy custom metal case with, like high voltage on the side and stuff like that. And the other interesting part of it is that it's got a billion USB ports on the back, which I thought was kind of crazy. I'll give you a closer look in a moment. But yeah, this apparently does not post after having some kind of issues. The garage spoke to the company that built it, and they were just like, take it to a repair shop, otherwise buy another one. And they were like, okay. So let's take a closer look at this thing, and we'll see if it's going to be an interesting repair. Right, I'm going to roll the intro, and I'll see you guys in a moment. Alright, so this thing is Rottler brand. Whether that's the machine or not, I don't know. But it's got what looks like a pretty standard issue micro ATX computer inside of it. The only thing that is sort of not standard about it is just this massive USB controller that's hanging off the back here. I did ask the client, I was just like, is there like a lot of USB attached to this? Because that's a lot of USB ports. And they were like, oh, apparently we use like, I think they said we use like 8 of them or something like that. There's a lot of wires connected to this machine. And so I don't know what the deal with that is. Sometimes these repairs can be a matter of the computer is more interesting than the repair, so to speak. But yeah, at any rate, let's open this thing up. So we'll ignore the danger signs because there's nothing particularly high voltage in here. It's a PC. And I'll take off these hex screws that are holding it together. It really is a nicely built chassis, this. It's somewhat overkill, but I think it's very cool. Whoever designed this computer built their own case for it, and I think that's quite cool, but also probably makes it hideously expensive. We got some more on the side there, yeah. So moving on to the inside, we've got an EVGA 400 watt power supply and a Asus Prime H310M motherboard. And it's pretty spotless for an industrial machine. This is in great shape. This I'm guessing this sits in a rack cabinet or something like that, because for something that's been in an industrial setting, this thing is mint condition. Normally any kind of industrial computer will be absolutely filthy inside. It's one of the biggest killers of industrial computers, is just being in a very punishing and dusty environment where they get generally zero love at all. So yeah, that's kind of neat. So the power cables have been zip tied to the inside of the power supply, which is a practice that I do not approve of. Has that fan been blocked? It might have. Let me get a close-up of that. So this excess cable here has been zip tied into the fan grill. This is a really bad habit. Don't do this. If the zip tie is tight enough, then it won't go too far in and it won't clip the fan. However, if I push, I've just had a quick check, and if I push that in, it does block the fan. Whether that has been blocking the fan or not, I don't know. It's hard to tell at this point. But point is, yeah, don't do that. Just zip tie it somewhere else, get some of those double-sided pad things where you just stick the pad to the back of the case and it gives you a zip tie point. This is an awful habit. I'm actually just going to cut that out now in advance, just because that's just not a good idea. Yeah, hey-ho. How about that? The back of the zip tie actually has marks on it where it has clipped the fan. So, yeah. That immediately makes the power supply a suspect. Before we go any further though, let's actually power this thing up and see what it does. Right, our survey says... Right, okay, we've got fans. Do we have lights? Yeah, we've got power light on the back of the computer. And the power supply fan is spinning, so, you know, that's cool. We don't have any diagnostic LEDs or anything, so no idea if it's actually doing anything. I'm going to find a beep speaker. Well, it's not making any noises. I'm going to reset it and see if it makes any beeps after a reset, because the speaker wasn't immediately plugged in. Right, and we're getting absolutely nothing out of it. The only sign of life we do have is that there is a slow blinking LED on this USB controller card. But that could be anything. That could just mean it's uninitialized, waiting for the motherboard or whatever. So, okay, let's turn it off. So let's start from the basics. You'll notice when we started it up, the fan was at constant speed. There was no change in fan speeds or anything like that. So there was no signs of life, no signs that it might have been doing anything. So to start with the basics, we're going to do a BIOS reset. So we'll pop out the battery, and I'm just going to grab a multimeter and check the voltage of it. So as always, a flat BIOS battery in a desktop computer is generally not going to stop the computer from booting. However, it can often be the cause of other issues that would spring from a BIOS reset. So if the computer has inexplicably, it keeps RAM training, or it intermittently posts, or it takes ages to post, or the clock keeps resetting, these are all many problems that could stem from a flat BIOS battery. This one is 3.08. That's near as damn it's 3.1. As I've said in the past, my usual policy is to replace anything below 3.1. However, on a desktop computer, because the BIOS battery is so easy to get to, you can generally let it run a lot lower than that. You're going to be possibly seeing problems when it goes below 3.0. That's when it should be considered flat. In a laptop where it's a pain in the ass to get to the BIOS battery, I do preventative maintenance and replace them below 3.1. Desktop computer, they're not hard to get to, so you can let them run a lot lower than that. So this guy's probably fine. It might be a scooch lower than that once it's in circuit, but like, you know, let's, even if I'm speaking pessimistically, it's not going to be below like 3.06, 3.07, which is fine. So yeah. All right, that's our BIOS reset. Let's put that back in, plug in the power, see if anything has changed. Just checking that other cables are properly connected. Yeah, those are all plugged in. I can't get my fingernails underneath the EPS or ATX cables, so those are fine. CPU fan's still not doing anything, so there's no reason to believe that it's thinking right now. Okay. I'm going to take this USB card out, if I can. Yes, I can. So we've got to undo some more screws. It's got this bracket built onto it. It's obviously been designed to have a lot of support so people can plug a lot of, like, this thing has 16 USB ports on it. If you actually had all of those populated, you would have this enormous sheaf of USB cables, a whole loom of them coming out the back. And that would be a lot of drag on the computer. So they've obviously built this bracket up to be able to support all of that if it's present. The customer says they usually have about 8 plugged into it, and there's a lot of cables that go into the back of this thing. I will ask them for more details, just to see if I can find out a bit more about, you know, what this thing actually runs, just for the sake of interest. But yeah, sometimes that's none of my business. So, the Dragon LC Revision 5. Interesting card, this. Wow, that's got a Xilinx Spartan 6 on it. That is a really fascinating USB controller because it's got an awful lot of USB on it. I was thinking, what kind of USB host card has 16 ports? Well, an FPGA. This thing is probably ludicrously expensive, but at the same time, They didn't do anything nice to the edge connector. Look how rough that thing is. What a strange piece of hardware. And is that a crap ton of MOSFETs for powering the ports? Whack. Okay, I will try it one more time with the USB card disconnected. Then we're going to try a different power supply. Right, nothing. Disconnecting the power supply. Oh, something else I forgot to point out as well. We've got a Kingston SSD hiding back there. So that's the storage on this thing. That's probably also a little bit suspicious because those Kingston SSD now drives are getting pretty tired. They have not aged particularly well. Power and power. What kind of memory does this thing have? 8 gigs of DDR4 2400. I don't think this is memory, but we're getting down to the 3 big components, or the 3 things that are left. Nah, it's not going to do anything. Okay, let's take the memory out. No signs of distress here. Let me see what I've got kicking around. Here is a completely random DDR4 module that I had to one side, which I think is a tester module, but I don't recall. So good luck, everyone. Power, power. I've said before in previous videos, but when you're waiting for a computer to post and it's a PC like this one where you have virtually no feedback whatsoever as to if it's doing anything at all, watching the fan speed, the CPU fan speed, is probably your best bet. On an industrial computer like this, it would be safe to assume that that it might have been set up to just run all the fans at full speed all the time, because that's what you would do on an industrial computer. However, because we've done a BIOS reset on this motherboard, the fan should be on its default curve. So what we should see is that the fan spins up, and then when the motherboard starts doing stuff, the CPU fan alters speed and comes under thermal control, and you can see a visibly changing pattern in the fan speed. So that's basically what I'm using as a gauge as to if anything is happening or not. And nothing is happening. All right, let's keep digging. I'm going to cut back a little bit more here, get that out of the way. And let's take a look at the CPU in that case. Turn all the push pin peg posts anti-clockwise and then lift them up. And then I should just be able to wiggle the cooler off. Right, thermal paste is kind of dry. And that is an i5 8400, which is convenient because I've got some 8th gen stuff lying around. I think. I've got the CPU anyway, I believe. Yeah, I've got an 8500 and an 8600K to one side here, so we've got some spare CPUs. Let's pop this guy out. Very unlikely to be the CPU. Intel CPUs of this era are pretty bomb-proof. I'll be flabbergasted. Basically, any Intel Core CPU up till like 12th gen, I guess, definitely at least up to 11th gen, was pretty indestructible. That's where the old catchphrase I used to use, "it's never the CPU unless it is," comes from, is that for Intel CPUs from this era, it was never the CPU. these days with Intel 13th and 14th gen, and also just with a lot of AMD Ryzen's sort of second and third gen especially, that has become a lot more nebulous, and it absolutely can be the CPU. But yeah, Intel 8th gen, it's not going to be the CPU. So yeah, let's stick another CPU in there anyway. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to pop the RAM out, and we'll put a different CPU in. And when we start it up, I'm basically looking to see it do anything at all at this point. With no RAM, it's not going to post, but if it gives us a memory error beep, then that's something, you know. Right, that's that. I'm going to put a different CPU cooler in that I can just have resting on top of the chip. All right, power and power. Nope, still nothing. Annoyingly, I don't think I have an 8th gen motherboard to hand. I'm going to flash the BIOS on it, I think. I'm pretty confident at this point that this is a bad motherboard. So I am going to go straight in and bang a new BIOS onto it. Right, I'm going to use my pogo pin adapter on this with my XG Pro T76. Pin 1 is in the top right, so I'm going to get that lined up. I would get a better camera view, but I had all the cameras set up on the other bench because I didn't want to clear this bench off. So, right, let's see. Let's auto detect. Oh, before we auto detect, let's find out what actual chip we've got. Okay, and this chip is a Winbond 25Q128 JVSQ, which is that's a classic one. This, you see this chip quite often. So let's go ahead and auto detect that and see if it pops up. 25Q128 JV WSON A. It's not a WSON A. Oh, it's a SOIC. I don't think it makes a difference. But sure, select and read. Cool, there's our read. Fine, right, let's save the dump. Save. And this motherboard is a H310M. Hasn't seen a BIOS update since 2021 this. It's an obsolete motherboard though, so that's not really surprising. So I'll open the zip file and we're going to pull that cap file out and put it into my working folder. And let's open our new BIOS. So this is a capsule file. Now, because I'm using the XG Pro software, it will handle this cap file just on its own. It will just make sense of it all. If you're using another program like a CH341A or some such, you might need to extract that cap file. I've got videos showing how to do this in the UEFI crash course or UEFI basics course. So check that video out for more information. In the meantime, let's just blast this onto the motherboard. So let's go ahead and program. Now I have to hold dead still while it does this. All right, programming is finished. Let's plug the motherboard back in and see if that's made any difference at all. I've got a set of really nice machined hex bolt screws like this to fit a motherboard. And I keep wanting to put them into my own PC at home and have nice shiny screws. But I know the moment I want to do any maintenance and I have to go and find a different screwdriver just to take those screws out, I will hate myself and ask myself why I didn't just use Phillips like a normal person. And I'm going to put in the customer's memory as well, because at this point I've no reason to believe there's any issues with the RAM. It's not impossible, but it feels extremely unlikely. Leave me alone. Adamant IT. Yeah, that's fine. I can hold around for a little bit longer. Yep, I'll hang around until at least 1/4 past. Pro tip: if a customer phones you and says they're on their way and you close in 5 minutes, and you're willing to hang around a little bit longer for them, make sure you give them a deadline. You say, "I'll be here until 1/4 past," because for all you know, they might just decide that they can't be bothered after all, and you'll be hanging around until for the next half an hour like a lemon, waiting for them to not show up. You say, "All right, I'll be here for another 15 minutes, then I'm out the door." And if they say, "Yes, I'll be there in 5 minutes," then that'll be fine. Okay, right. So we've got HDMI, we've got power. Power switches are connected again. Let's plug in a mouse and keyboard. Fingers crossed we should see some kind of change. Here goes nothing. 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 Okay, that feels like a bad BIOS flash to me. BIOS reset, just in case. Nope. Right, jump cut. So what just happened was I flashed the BIOS, I put it all back on the bench, pushed the power button, and nothing happened. It was stone dead. Now, when you flash the BIOS and it kills the computer even more in that manner, where you push the power button and now it's completely dead, that is usually indicative that you've done something wrong, that the BIOS was incorrect, or you flashed the wrong BIOS for the board, or something like that. And given that it was past closing time, I just said, I'm going home. So I went home. So this morning I came in and I flashed the BIOS again, and one more time. Again, it was stone dead, didn't work. So I was like, okay. I rolled back to the backup BIOS, and that put me back where I was with the no post. And so then I tried a old BIOS, and again, same thing, just no power, nothing at all. And so at this point, I was like, okay, something strange is happening here. I don't think this is a BIOS issue, though. I'm just going to restore it to the original BIOS and then just declare the motherboard dead. So I restored my backup BIOS to it one more time, set it up on the test bench to make sure that it would go back to the original symptoms, and it's posted. So, yeah, I don't know what that's all about. I'm not convinced that I don't think that was a BIOS issue, because I've restored the backup BIOS. So we're on exactly the same BIOS configuration that we had before. But at some point through all of the shenanigans and all of the messing about that I've put the board through, it seems to have come good. So maybe it was a stuck BIOS, maybe it was something else. I'm not sure. I don't know what has caused this board to start working again. However, it does seem to be working. So let's move forward from here. I'm going to put it back in the computer again, get it all reassembled, make sure it still works, and then we're going to do a BIOS update because it's on an ancient version of the BIOS, make sure it continues to work, and go from there, I guess. So yeah, let's put it all back together again. How much do you want to bet I'm going to reassemble all of this and it's going to stop working again? I've actually already ordered another motherboard for this now, because I genuinely thought that the motherboard was kill, and I've ordered a second-hand one from eBay for the princely sum of £25, although it is an untested motherboard, but yeah, we'll see. So if this motherboard keeps messing me about, I will just change it anyway, because it's not expensive. But, you know, let's see. I'm also going to quickly just zip through these other CPUs I've got and make sure that those all work as well. The CPU that I just had the successful test with is my 8600K. But that was already a known good. Yeah, so now we need to try some other CPUs, and that's probably going to upset it as well. But if it keeps consistently working with other CPUs and everything, then that will be a good acid test to make sure that this isn't a fluke. Right, F1 to run setup. So we've still got the 8600K in there. I'm going to do the BIOS update now, because where I've messed the BIOS about a lot on this motherboard, even though, like, technically speaking, the BIOS is as it was before I started because I restored my backup. But after you've mucked about with a motherboard, I find it's always nice to just do a inline update to the latest version so the motherboard has self-updated and you can just be certain then that it's gotten all of its ducks in a row, that everything is straightened out and as it's supposed to be, you know? So yeah, let me just grab the BIOS. Like, that's very much a superstition, but, you know, whatever. Right, BIOS storage devices, version 3202. Read this file. Yes, I want to update the BIOS. There it go. BIOS update complete. Let's just go back into setup again. And that's showing version 3202 in the top left now. So I'm going to save and exit just so it is happy. Then we're going to swap out to the other two CPUs I've got and just double check that both of those work. Right, that 8400 works. Good. And that one works as well. Good. We've got a consistent post now, even when we're chopping in different CPUs. So it looks like this thing is stable. I'm going to go ahead and put on the customer's CPU cooler, and we'll throw the USB card back in. And yeah, this thing should be good to go. That's everything in. And we've got the USB card in as well. And I've also got the SSD connected. So let this start up. And hopefully we should go all the way up into Windows or whatever system it is currently running. Okay. And there's our Windows boot. Looks like this thing is running Windows 10, but being an industrial machine, it's not surprising that it's running an older version of Windows. This probably has long-term support on it or something like that. So yeah, Windows version isn't relevant. As long as it's got the software on it that it's supposed to have, that's all that matters to me. So that's us done. Thank you everyone for tuning in. That was a little bit of an oddball one with a not super satisfying resolution on it in my eyes. But if nothing else, I think it does show that sometimes when you've got a motherboard that really looks like it wants to start but just doesn't start, sometimes just flashing the BIOS, repeated BIOS resets, CPU in and out and stuff like that, sometimes you can just shake it until it works, if that makes sense. Not always, but you know, sometimes just a lot of moving things about will just, you know, get the board out of its reverie. So yeah, I think the fact that the board was powering up was that was why I persisted with it, because the fact that it was powering up and doing something means that someone must have been at home, you know? So yeah. All right, thanks everyone for tuning in. I'll see you all next time. Bye for now.